Welcome back to the Crypto Simulation. I'm excited to talk to you tonight briefly about some thoughts I had with Bitcoin. I wanted to talk to you about it on a 2 week time frame because I've noticed some things I wanted to share with you. And anytime I notice something like this, I just want to get it out as soon as I can. Just a reminder, none of this is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Any price predictions or projections I make are for entertainment purposes only. So you'll remember in a Bitcoin video I did recently, if you watched it, if you're new to the channel, by the way, please subscribe, like, comment, and all that stuff, so you can be notified of my content. But you'll remember I spoke about Bitcoin on the 3 day, and I did an extensive 1 hour, almost 1 hour long video on Bitcoin. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. And I think Bitcoin was down around, I don't know, somewhere around 47K. And it's generally following the path I expected it to follow. It's entered into this zone. This is the Lux Algo liquidity zone where we have low liquidity and we actually have some bearish sentiment in this area. And it's not a surprise at all because look at all these touch points in this zone. All the people who bought Bitcoin, about 3 years ago, we'll say 2.5 years ago, there's a lot of people here who are looking to sell their Bitcoin and they're going to sell. I can't say anything's 100% certain, but I think we're entering into that zone where we could see a substantial correction start to materialize as soon as the end of this month. And that's not what this video is going to be about. I'm going to be looking at a little bit bigger picture, but kind of what I'm going to be looking at tonight is what can we expect from Bitcoin this year? And I've talked about that too, but I've noticed some things that are bringing me more into the fold of thinking we're going to have a left translated cycle. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that means a Bitcoin cycle that ends a lot earlier than expected. And I'll start out by saying I've done some videos on this. My base case for it is that the United States economy and possibly even the global economy is heading for a pretty bad recession based on the very rapid contraction of the money supply, the after effects of inflation, rate hikes, etc., etc. But I'm starting to see signs of this left translated cycle materializing in the charts on a 2 week time frame. And I wanted to make sure I get this content out to you before it happens so you can see the data for yourself and kind of make up your mind. So what you see below is called the average sentiment oscillator. And the way that it works is that anytime the green is moving away from the red, that's considered bullish. Anytime the blue is contracting or the green is contracting towards the red, that's considered bearish convergence. And the same is true of when this cross actually happens. You get more extreme bearishness when you're going up with the red above the green, and less extreme bearishness. Well, I should say you start to get some bullishness as the green moves back up. So I noticed something tonight that I thought was a little bit peculiar about our particular cycle. And remember, I don't truly believe in cycles the way that maybe most people do, but I'm going to have to use that word because I don't know what else to use. So if you look at where the ASO is right now and you draw a horizontal line, I want you to notice something. We have not hit levels this high very often in this market on the 2 week time frame. So if you exclude what happened in 2010 with that initial capitalization of Bitcoin, and you look here, we've only hit this line a few times in its history. And so one of those times was February 18th, and that almost corresponded to a peak. And then you had May 13th, kind of when we came back down. Okay, first peak of the 2013 cycle. And then in May 2017, we tagged this line and came down for a little while. And then 8 months later, in December 17, as we were pretty much coming into our macro high for the cycle, we topped out above it. So there was an 8 month lag there. And then in 2020, December, that's when we approached this line again. And I mean, by April, the first peak of the market cycle was in. And so it is a little concerning to me to see that we're touching this so early in what a lot of people are assuming is going to be a really long cycle. And look, there's no guarantees that this cycle has to end soon, but based on the past history with this average sentiment oscillator, it certainly doesn't give it a lot of time. Like even if we get a double peak like we've had before in previous cycles, that, like for instance, this went through in March of 13. The double peak came, looks like around November of 13. That wasn't a lot of time, and we're talking like a 7 to 8 month lag from the beginning here when you start to enter into a mania season to where you end. There's really not a lot of time. There's like 8 months. So if we follow this metric, And keep in mind that the past does not have to repeat. It often just rhymes, but it doesn't necessarily have to play out exactly the same way. But if we do go down this path again with an 8 month lag, we're looking at our cycle ending sometime between, depending on when we enter into this white zone, like when we get above this, it could be October to December. Now, this doesn't have to happen. We don't have to peek our head above here, but it is my base case that Bitcoin price is going higher. So if that happens, you can expect the ASO is going to pop its head up above here. And by all indications, that is kind of marking that mania season is not that far off. And the end of the Bitcoin cycle is probably not that far off either. Could end, by the end of this year. So that's only one metric though, right? This is the average sentiment oscillator. You want to look for confluence on other indicators and in other patterns. So let's take a look. Okay, for this next observation, I want to look at a moving average ribbon. I've listed out a lot of moving averages here. The light pink, sorry, that's not pink, it's like lavender. That's the 10-week moving average. These are SMAs. The yellow is the 20-week, the blue is the 40-week, the light blue is the 50-week, white is 100-week, and red is 200-week. Now take all these values and multiply them by 2. Okay, because it's hard for me to I'll just talk about it as 10, 20, 40, 50, 100, 200, because we're on the 2 week. So just keep that in mind. 2 week moving averages are very strong moving averages. And what do you usually see during bull markets? So if you look at the bull phase, I'm actually going to grab a pen. If you look at the bull phase right here, you'll notice that all the moving averages are what? They're concave up for the most part. Some are concave down, the longer term ones, but you see that they're all nicely separated and turned up. That's what you want to see during a mania phase. But what happens before the mania phase? Before the mania phase, you have a lot of your longer term moving averages kind of sorted out and Bitcoin price is nowhere near them, but the shorter term are kind of jumbled up. It's basically Bitcoin kind of just getting itself out of this bear market mess and trying to get things organized again. So you can see every mania phase, going back now to the beautiful 2016-17 cycle, which I just feel like our cycle shares a lot in common with. You can see we were getting things sorted out over here, and shortly after things got sorted out, we took off into mania. And during mania, it's just beautiful the way the 10, 20, 50, 100, the 10, 20, 40, 50, 100, and 200 all line up so beautifully. And it's only when they start to kind of turn down again that you get worried. And you can see this, this plays out every time. And this is reflected in the Gaussian channel as well, which I'll pull up next. But let's look at where we are today and kind of compare it to where we've been in the past. So you'll see if we zoom in, sorry, I have to take this pen off. If we zoom in on this chart, maybe just make the price really big here. You can see that we have kind of a giant mess that happened here in October, where all the moving averages kind of like came together after being all jumbled up. And what we're having now is we can see sorting taking place. You've got the 10-week turned up very nicely. You've got the 20-week turned up very nicely. Now and again, this is the 20-week, truly the 20-week, and this is truly the 40-week. So I should really say what it correctly is, but let me just again not use week as the words. So they have the 10 turned up, the 20 turned up, and you've got the 40 not quite there yet. You've got this is not the 40, this is the 50. You got the 50 not quite there yet. You got the 40 about to cross the 50, so that's getting sorted out. Now the 100 is just kind of off here in no man's land. Not sure what's going to happen with that one, honestly, but what I expect is going to happen is that the 40 is going to make its way up here, the 50 is going to make its way up here, and we could very well find ourselves in mania around the halving. I know it seems crazy to think that, but we could be at the start of our mania phase as soon as April comes around, especially if these moving averages are turning themselves out. And you can almost imagine mania doesn't last very long, or if we're not in mania, we could at least be heading into it, right? I can't tell you that mania would definitely start in April, but it certainly could. That just depends on what kind of correction we get after going up here and how that affects the moving averages, which is impossible for me to know right now. But you can definitely see how a mania phase is not that far off, just looking at how these moving averages are sorting themselves out. Another thing that makes me feel that mania is closer than we think, There's only been two times in Bitcoin's history where we've gotten a red Gaussian channel. Only two times, and we're in one of them right now. We spent a whole year blasting through the 2 week Gaussian channel. Let me tell you, that is not easy to do. It is not easy. That is telling me there's a lot of bullish momentum here. This is reflecting those moving averages. What happened in 2016 when we blasted through the red Gaussian? Let me show you. Let me show you what happened. In 2016, we blasted through the red Gaussian coming out of August of 15, and we were in a green Gaussian about a year later. This was a shorter red Gaussian than what we are experiencing now, and just the kind of momentum that we got was insane. So from July of 2016 to January of 2017, we moved up aggressively, and so we came out of the red Gaussian like around June, and half a year later we were off in mania season. In fact, you could argue we were already in mania season here, and put in our blow off top in December of 2017. So, and then if you look at this red Gaussian, there's kind of an interesting picture that emerges, which I'll talk about later. But we're going to get out of this red Gaussian pretty soon, because look, we have the inflection right here. We're starting to trend flat, and this is where you're going to start to see this kind of flatten out and turn green. And so how is it going to turn green? More upward momentum. That's how it's going to get green. So I do think we're heading into the 50s. And I did say in one of my videos that 53,000 would be a good turning point, again, because of all the horizontal resistance there. But for all I know, we could do some choppy chop and then go up from there. Okay, there's no guarantee that we have to come down right now and test the $35,000 region. That's just not a guarantee. In fact, it's not even that likely. If this Gaussian turns green, it's you can slice through it on a wick, like the COVID wick certainly was a slice through it. You generally don't slice through green Gaussians though, easily, especially a 2 week, other than a black swan event, which those are impossible to predict. And so what's something else that I want to, I've pointed this out in previous videos, but why don't I believe in Bitcoin cycles? Well, the Gaussian channel kind of like, is one of the things that makes me not really believe in cycles, like in the way that people traditionally think, oh, it has to be a 4-year cycle. No, that's nonsense. I don't think it does. So here's our initial capitalization. And if you follow the Gaussian, there's only been two times where price has shown like a truly a lot of weakness. And one of those times was during the 2014 bear market, and the other time was during the 2022 bear market. You can see that we had some very weird behavior during the 2018 bear market coming out of that, and then this huge bounce that really messed with this Gaussian. So, what I see here is I see just logarithmic regression, and I see that we're getting to a point now where this is starting to kind of flatten out a little bit. And I spoke about this in my video, but I will bring it up again just to kind of drive a point home. If you just focus on the price movement and stop thinking about cycles, you can see with this logarithmic regression channel that we are just kind of making our way down it, right? We're below the mean line that we have straddled for a number of years. I talked about this more in another video, so I don't want to get like too repetitive, but just to point out that having our cycle end in, say, December of this year, October, December, January of next year, sometime around there, having the Bitcoin cycle end would not be that surprising, and it would in fact correspond to a price that's below 100,000, which a lot of people may not want to accept, but it certainly is possible that that happens. And that's what kind of gives you this triple top scenario. If I can kind of like show you, I don't know that I want to use a horizontal line, but let's use just a regular trend line, and I'll fit it in a second. But if you just draw a trend line from, look at this tool is behaving very funny right now, but okay, if it will let me do this, it's the magnet thing. Anyway, I think you kind of get the idea of what I'm getting at here, is that we can come down and hit this trend line sometime in 2024, 2025, and it might correspond to like an $85,000 peak or something along those lines, which I know would be very disappointing to a lot of people, but it is definitely in line with this logarithmic trend. Here's another indicator making me think our cycle is going to end early. This is the bull bear power trend, and I want you to notice that we have just like gone. This is bearish, bears in control down here, especially with these red volume bars. we've come out of the bear market and we had just shot right up to the top. And let me show you how rare getting this high is. Like if you draw a horizontal line from where we are right now, you can see the times that we've hit this have been when. Now this is like December 2012. This right here is October 2016. We didn't even go this high in the 2021 cycle. So we have some really, really fierce bullish momentum right now. And yes, it is likely that this does come down and, we crab around somewhere for a little while. You can see that in 2016, 2017 cycle, the bull momentum actually dropped from this point until we hit our peak. So this is not like as reliable of an indicator, perhaps, for a left translated cycle as the average sentiment oscillator is, but it does give you an idea of just how far we've come and how quickly we've come that far. It reminds me a little bit of coming out of 2015, but even more aggressively than that. Look how just sharp this is on the 2-week. Okay, this indicator is known as the average directional index and directional index, ADX and DI. The green DI measures bull trend strength. You want to see it moving away from the red one. That the red one's bear trend strength. When it's moving away or diverging, that is good for the bulls. When it's moving toward the red, that is not good for the bulls. That's generally going to be a little bit bearish, but not bearish in a big way. When the red gets above the green, that's generally bearish in a big way. The ADX is a trend strength, and you can see that we just kind of vacillate between bull and bear, and you can even see how this played out really nicely here. We went from trend strength peaking in July of 2017, and we had our top not that far after trend strength peaked. Here we had our first top in April 2021, and we came down, and actually on a pretty weak trend we went to our second top. So ADX and DI does not necessarily give you an idea of where the top is going to be, because your momentum starts to fade actually as you may move into another top on your logarithmic regression channel. But if we apply kind of the same thinking to this cycle, I drew a trend line to match the previous peaks. By the way, this is trend strength. So a trend strength up here of 76 or so is really strong. I mean, it's incredibly strong. Anything over 20 is considered strong. And we've actually just entered 31.45 with bullish divergence. So if we were to follow this trend and chop around a little bit on our way up here, we would hit a peak of trend strength in July, in the summer. That's when trend strength would peak. And usually when trend strength peaks, you're looking at Bitcoin peaking in price not that long after. So if we were here in December of 2024, kind of on our way back down, that's where maybe the bullish momentum is starting to slow down for Bitcoin, and we should be on the lookout for a top. So this is not something you should take to the bank by any means, but I'm also seeing signs of a left translated cycle in the ADX and DI. Yet another indicator, the KZX RSI, you can see that we're already in an overbought band. And if you look at past bull markets, especially the 2021 one, you can see the first time we entered into this was in a sustained way was in October of 2020. We've entered into it in a fairly sustained way so far in November of last year. In the 2016-2017 cycle, you had some moments of it, like June of 16, December of 16, February 17, but you weren't in the band that as long as we've been until quarter 2 of 2017. So we're building out these overbought regions a little bit earlier, in a sustained way than we have in the past. Now, we could get a double peak. That's a possibility that I haven't really spoken too much about. This is December 2012 to April 2013, but I mean, it's not like we really spent that much time. And you can even argue, you can make an argument that these were two separate cycles, okay? I know most people wouldn't view it that way. I kind of don't view it that way. I view it as kind of similar to what happened in 2021, where you had your first top and then a second top right after. But with diminished volatility and diminishing returns, we should expect to see this green region not go as high on each subsequent cycle. So there's sort of a diminishing nature to this as well. So you can kind of see where we're at now. Again, our cycle ending, Bitcoin cycle ending in 8 or 9 months doesn't seem so crazy when you look at this chart too. And probably the easiest to visualize illustration of why I feel we're going to have a left translated cycle in all probabilities. This is the triple exponential moving average of Bitcoin over time. And you can see that every time the peak of the triple exponential moving average is moving lower and lower. And it's almost following this trend line. We have, 3 data points that I've tried to fit onto this trend line. And by the time you reach maximum trend strength for the triple exponential moving average, that's usually after Bitcoin has peaked. So like if you look here, this is, May 2021, we already had our first peak, but we still had some positive momentum. When you go below the zero line, that's where you have maximum bearishness. So we're not going to focus on that though right now. So look at right here. We had our peak in December of 17. We got a little bit more strong momentum on the triple exponential moving average. Of course, price was starting to go down by this point. And then we had right here just around, early 2014. And we know during that time, we were also kind of on our way into our bear market, but we had some energy for some dead cat bounces along the way. So if we were to extend this out and do so with a little drawing, let's see what that would look like. Okay, and it's really hard to predict exactly what path it would take, but this places us roughly in the summer of this year. And so again, it's just not out of the question to think, if it follows this trend line, that we are a lot closer to Bitcoin peaking and a lot closer to maximum bullishness momentum and mania than we might otherwise think. So how do you use this data and this information to prepare yourself for a potential left translated cycle? And I think the key is stay plugged into what's going on with the economy. I'm not saying become an economic, maxi or whatever, but pay attention to the stock market, pay attention to the NASDAQ, pay attention to what's going on with the Fed, pay attention to the dollar. These kind of things are clues. And just look around you. Are people struggling around you, or are they just absolutely doing great and killing it? And with all the inflation we've had, the rate hikes and everything, people are struggling. And that, unemployment is like the last thing to go, to show up in a struggling economy, because the last thing any company wants to do is lay qualified people off, because it's going to be so expensive to replace them. And losing human resources is like the worst thing that you can lose. So that stuff doesn't show up until much later. So there's a lagging effect. And look, Bitcoin just went back over 50K right while I was recording this. There's like a lagging effect from things like rate hikes and money supply contracting to when unemployment shows up. And, I kind of view this last leg of, whatever Bitcoin has had in the past, 14-year cycle practically, almost 15 years, you know, I view this last leg as kind of like a rally into a recession. It's just that recession may not materialize until after the presidential elections, like it did in 1968. But I think the key is to just be open minded. Okay, that's the best thing you can do for yourself, is be open minded to different possibilities. Be open minded to the possibility that the 4-year cycle does not play out, even though it kind of has in the past 2 cycles. There's confirmation bias there, and you should also not just take what I'm saying at face value, because I could have some confirmation bias of my own. And maybe that's playing into the way I'm reading the charts. And if that's the case, you should try to point that out to me and, show me some points of where you think I'm wrong. And let's have a conversation about it and try to prepare ourselves for what could be a left translated cycle. Now, if everybody in the entire crypto space starts expecting a left translated cycle, I think that that will cause it to probably not happen. So, the majority of people is usually wrong at the peaks and the troughs. So we do have to also pay attention to market sentiment along the way. So there are a lot of ways this market can surprise us, but I think if you are preparing for a left translated cycle, you should have risk metrics that you're using, whether those are coming from a place like Ben Cowan's Into the Cryptoverse or Polarity Digital's risk metrics from Upside Down Data. And I'm sure there's other risk metrics. I use risk metrics of my own on TradingView. Find some risk metrics, and when things seem like they're getting overheated and you see the moving averages all turning up like crazy, start thinking about selling. And don't be afraid to sell. That's the thing. Like, what if you sold, like, if you sold during the last cycle, like around 30,000 or 40,000, You were probably selling that Bitcoin mostly into altcoins anyways, and but like just the key is to try not to get too greedy, right? When you wait way too long, that's when you get hosed. And we don't know if we're going to have a distribution phase like we had in the 2020 cycle. We could very well have a slow blow off top. I mean, we could just kind of crawl our way up and then just kind of start coming down, kind of like the stock market does. So be prepared for anything. Don't be afraid to sell in profit. Any profit is good profit, and have some risk indicators to help you out. I wanted to look at something kind of different real quick before we go. And let's take a look at Bitcoin upside down. I've done this before, but let's just do it again. When you look at Bitcoin upside down, to me at least, it becomes easier to visualize how we're almost at like we're coming to a point where we're about to put in a lower low, but it only looks like it might be a slightly lower low, right? A triple bottom. That's what it looks like. I mean, honestly, doesn't it look like that to you? Like it looks like we're kind of curving our way around here. And let me see if I can draw this out for you. Yeah, what if I draw out a path like this with a bunch of touch points? You can see that we reach, it's almost kind of crazy. Like we could reach, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm drawing this. It's hard to tell exactly where to end this, but we could reach the peak of this like in July. We could have a Bitcoin top in the summer and then maybe bounce and come back and top again at the end of the year. That is perfectly possible. Having a double top again. I have no idea what's going to play out, but it's good to look at these visualizations and these exercises to try to help yourself get an idea. So I said this was going to be a short video. I guess it wasn't. So I'll end it here. But let me just leave you with a few reminders. So number one, another thing I said here was financial advice. Number two, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. Even if you're not subscribed, subscribing will alert you and push my content out to other people. Hit that notification button, like and comment if you have anything to say, and be sure to join my free Telegram group, the Snack Pit, which you can find the link to in the video description and also in my bio. So I hope you're all doing well. Enjoy Bitcoin price being above 50,000. Don't don't stare too much at upside down Bitcoin. It's just a meme at this point, right? And I hope you can come up with your own price predictions and your own projections for what might happen in the market and share those with the group. We welcome conflicting opinions, and that's how we're going to learn best, right? We don't want this to be an echo chamber. We know that I'm going to be wrong sometimes. We know you're going to be wrong sometimes. We shouldn't be trying to penalize each other for that, but to try to understand this market better so we can all make as much money as possible and enjoy that money, live our lives. Okay, so see you next time. Have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are in the crypto simulation.